I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I won't approve any paid leave for you. You always challenge me. There's no need for you to return." When I heard these words, it felt like I had hit my limit. "Are you sure about that?" I asked, surprised by my own boldness. My boss seemed caught off guard too, her eyes widening in shock. "My name is Sarah, and I turned 31 recently. For a decade, I've been part of the Aita enterprises, making me one of the more seasoned employees despite my relatively young age. Growing up in a modest family, I was the cherished only child. We weren't rich, so new clothes were a rarity for me. I usually wore hand-me-downs from relatives or neighbors, yet I never felt lacking. I was showered with affection by those around me and have fond memories of weekend picnics in the park with my parents. Close bonds with my cousins were formed, perhaps out of empathy, but we've remained in touch over the years. My childhood was filled with love. In high school, I was the student council president and a top student. My teachers encouraged me to pursue higher education, and I even earned a scholarship offer. However, I chose a different path. "I don't want to go to college. I aim to become a public servant," I declared, despite my parents' attempts to persuade me otherwise. I wanted to ease their financial burden as quickly as possible. Tragically, my father fell ill and passed away before I could fully express my gratitude for his sacrifices. I then decided to support my mother, continuing to live with her as I navigated the complexities of adult life. Over 6 years, I earned respect at work, eventually taking on roles like training new hires and filling in for my boss. My efforts were rewarded with good bonuses, enabling me to contribute about $800 monthly to my family. Outside of work, I enjoyed trips with friends, colleagues, and my boyfriend. Everything changed when our manager was replaced by the new president's daughter. Rumors flew that she had been coasting on her father's wealth and that this job was her father's attempt to instill some responsibility in her. Despite the challenges, I continued to dedicate myself to my work, hoping to make a positive impact. Learning that she was the president's daughter had set a certain tone within the company. Many colleagues were aware that her position was more a result of her family connections than her actual experience in the field. This knowledge led to a palpable shift in the office atmosphere, making it increasingly tense and uncomfortable. It seemed inevitable that this tension would eventually affect me directly, and that moment came over something as simple as preparing a cup of coffee for her. Upon her request, I made her a hot coffee, but her reaction was far from grateful. "What's this? Are you trying to annoy me?" she snapped, clearly displeased. Despite following her instructions, she threw the coffee in my direction, causing me to dodge unsuccessfully. As I nursed my coffee-splashed arm, she criticized the drink's temperature and composition, claiming it was supposed to be warm with a specific amount of milk and sugar, her expectations differing wildly from common practice. Apologizing, I offered to make another, but her response only added insult to injury, disparaging my educational background while oddly complimenting my reputation in the company, a reputation I owed to the collective support of my colleagues. Her words and actions only intensified the pain from the burn and my desire to escape and tend to my injury. Her disappointment in me, voiced after hearing praises from her father, felt unjust and harsh. When a colleague tried to intervene, I assured them I was fine, not wanting them to become her next target. It was known that those who crossed her often ended up leaving the company under duress. As I was contemplating how to handle the situation, she unexpectedly grabbed my burned arm, causing me further pain as a twisted form of reprimand. Her satisfaction at my discomfort was evident when she finally let go, demanding I try making the coffee again. I excused myself, seizing the opportunity to escape to the pantry and soothe my burn. The entire ordeal was disheartening, especially after work, reflecting on the unnecessary harshness and the realization that my efforts to maintain peace and professionalism were met with such hostility. It was a clear reminder of the challenges that can arise when navigating workplace dynamics, particularly with those who wield their power irresponsibly. Right after the incident, I made my way to a dermatologist and was given a special cream for the burn. Unfortunately, the burn didn't heal completely and left a scar. To prevent worrying anyone, I chose outfits that would keep the mark out of sight. However, this event seemed to only worsen her behavior towards me. One day she criticized a document I had prepared, claiming it was riddled with errors, and accusing me of not taking my work seriously. When I inquired about the specific issues, she responded by tossing the document at me, marked up with pen. It was frustrating to deal with such pettiness from someone supposed to lead by example. Despite her claims, the document was a standard practice one, I had used before without issue. Yet she demanded a complete redo, citing vague inadequacies. Her understanding of management responsibilities seemed lacking, despite my efforts to guide her as I had successfully done with other new employees in the past. Her response to constructive feedback was dismissive, insisting that as the manager, she shouldn't be bothered with such tasks, contrary to what we had been instructed directly by the president. Her provocations escalated further when she made a personal attack, mentioning my family background out of the blue. I was taken aback, especially since I had never shared such details with her. She mocked the hard work of my family and the unfortunate illness of my father, suggesting a lack of reward for our struggles. I tried to steer the conversation back to professional matters, but her taunts became more personal, questioning the respectability of my parents and my reaction to her insults. In the face of her mockery, I couldn't help but defend my family's honor, asserting that she, knowing nothing of my life or my parents' virtues, had no right to judge. Her response was to threaten me with complaints to her father, implying that revealing my true nature would somehow jeopardize my position. Undeterred, I asked her to focus on correcting the document as required, reaffirming my determination not to be intimidated or pushed out by her behavior. As I walked away, she muttered something intended only for me to hear, a last attempt to unsettle me. Despite the challenges, I remained committed to performing my duties with integrity, unwilling to let her actions dictate my worth or dedication to my job. Ignoring her last remark, I returned to my workstation, her sarcastic comments echoing behind me. Despite the challenges, I gradually managed to teach her the basics of our work, covering everything from detailed computer operations to understanding various types of documents. During a much-needed break, I found solace on the office rooftop, sipping Kent coffee and pondering my future. That's when an unexpected call from an unknown number shattered the peace. "Hello, is this Sarah? This is Central Hospital. Your mother was urgently brought in. She's in a critical condition. Can you come immediately?" The world around me seemed to pause. My thoughts jumbled as I rushed to leave a note on her desk about my sudden departure, before hailing a taxi to the hospital. Upon arrival, a nurse led me to where my mother was resting. Seeing her lying there, peaceful yet pale, my heart sank. The doctor explained she had collapsed at work and was brought in, hoping for a miracle. My mother had always had a weak heart, but there had been no recent signs of trouble. The loss of my father had taken its toll on her, perhaps more than we realized. Overwhelmed with grief, I held my mother close, weeping for the time we would no longer have. After her passing, I mustered the strength to call my manager to request my first ever paid leave for the funeral. "I'm sorry for leaving suddenly today. My mother passed away. Could I take about a week off?" Her response, cold and dismissive, left me speechless. "I won't approve any paid leave for you." In my 10 years with the company, I had never asked for such a leave. Her refusal, especially at such a moment, pushed me to my limit. "Are you sure?" I asked, but she rambled on. I ended the call, feeling more alone than ever. The funeral was a blur of emotions, but I kept busy, finding solace in organizing the ceremony and expressing my gratitude to those who offered their support. My manager's attempts to contact me went unanswered. 3 weeks later, a call from the company president prompted me to return to the office. As I made my way to his office, coworkers expressed their condolences, their kindness, a small comfort in this difficult time. "It's Sarah. May I come in?" I asked after knocking on the president's door. He welcomed me, noting my absence. "Heard you've been out of touch for 3 weeks. Doesn't sound like you." I entered, ready to explain the whirlwind of grief and bureaucracy that had kept me away, hoping for understanding and perhaps a resolution to the recent turmoil. I shared everything with the president, not holding back on the details of how his daughter had been treating her colleagues and me. It must have been difficult for him to hear such feedback about his daughter, but he listened attentively to every word. His response was apologetic. "I'm sorry for my daughter's behavior. My wife and I may have overindulged her, leading to these issues," he admitted. I empathized, thinking of my own parents and how challenging parenting can be. The president, noticing my discomfort, offered a kind smile. "Sarah, you are an exceptional person. I've made a mistake in how I handled my daughter's situation. I've reached out to those who've left because of her in these past weeks, and I regret not acting sooner." The president then shared how, in my absence, the work environment had deteriorated further, mentioning a team protest that I hadn't been aware of. He seemed genuinely distressed by the turn of events. When I asked what his plans were, he looked solemn for a moment before his demeanor shifted back to the more composed leader I was familiar with. "I need your help," he said. "While having my daughter step down is an option, it won't be enough to address the grievances of our team. Will you help us?" Moved by his sincere plea, I agreed to help. It wasn't long before the female manager reached out to me, sounding frustrated. "How long do you plan to stay away?" she demanded. I reminded her that it was her who had told me not to return. Her reply was urgent, insisting I come back immediately due to the chaos in her department. Reluctantly, I prepared for work, only to find the office unsettlingly quiet, as if it were a weekend, despite being a weekday. Puzzled, I heard a commotion coming from my department. Peering inside, I saw the manager causing a disturbance. When I made my presence known, she quickly blamed me for the team's absence, claiming it was all my fault. I tried to maintain my composure, stating that the blame shouldn't be shifted onto me. She pushed me away in frustration, lamenting that even her father was unhelpful. She revealed that it had been half a day since anyone showed up, leaving her to manage calls, a task she was unaccustomed to. The situation had clearly spiraled beyond her control, marking a significant turning point in how the department was managed and highlighting the need for change. Seeing her in disarray was a stark contrast to the commanding figure she usually presented. Her hair was unkempt, and her usually immaculate nail polish was chipped and worn. It seemed her jacket had been carelessly hung somewhere, now showing signs of wear. Observing her downfall from her previously unshakable pedestal, I couldn't suppress a chuckle. "It's your own doing," I remarked. Her reaction was swift and heated. "What did you just say?" she snapped, her face flushing with anger. I stood my ground, pointing out the obvious flaw in her leadership. No one wants to follow someone who relies solely on authority rather than competence. Her response was to threaten my job, but I countered with a condition of my own, suggesting her resignation might be the best course of action. To my surprise, she declared she would take over the company, a statement made with a strangely confident smirk. Accepting my fate, I thanked her for the experience, which seemed to catch her off guard. As I began to pack my belongings, she seemed to reconsider, asking if I was truly leaving and suggesting I finish my work for the day. Her tone had changed. Gone was the bravado, replaced by desperation. I seized the moment to remind her of the legalities surrounding the denial of justified leave, highlighting her breach of labor laws. Her complexion pallid as the reality of her situation set in. I then addressed the broader issue of her management style. "Being in charge doesn't give you the right to corner people. It's clear you're not suited for a managerial role," I told her, making her question the upbringing that had instilled such attitudes. When she tried to turn the tables by bringing up my family, I pointed out her hypocrisy, noting that she too had insulted my family. Her anger was palpable as she tried to differentiate herself from me, insisting on our inherent differences. Yet, her justification for her actions only revealed more about her character, admitting she found pleasure in the discomfort of others. At that moment, the president appeared, catching the tail end of our exchange. She attempted to deflect, blaming misunderstandings and conspiracies for her situation. However, the president was unmoved, having already seen evidence of her actions. Her claims of being targeted out of jealousy for her skills fell flat in the face of undeniable proof. The unfolding scene marked a turning point, revealing the consequences of her actions not just to her, but to everyone involved. The president was unforgiving when she tried to defend her actions, criticizing her lack of competence and the negative impact she had on the company. Despite her plea, claiming the president's decision to appoint her as manager was a sign of trust, the president was clear about his intentions. He had hoped that surrounding her with capable employees would inspire improvement. However, her leadership resulted in declining performance and financial losses for the company. The president's stern decision was to send her to a rural area for a complete reset, away from the influence of her family and the comfort she was accustomed to. Later, in a moment of solitude, I couldn't help but comment on the situation with a mixture of pity and relief. As she departed from the company, the atmosphere among the remaining employees transformed. The president declared a day off to celebrate, and upon their return, everyone was noticeably happier, relieved at the end of her tumultuous tenure. In her new rural setting, stripped of the usual luxuries and under the strict guidance of her new colleagues, she began to show signs of change. Her attitude softened, she became more respectful, and she started to value the feedback of those around her. The president kept us updated on her progress, and to my surprise, she reached out to apologize. Yet, when she pleaded for a chance to return, I could not bring myself to support her request and eventually blocked further communication. The president took steps to mend the company's morale by reaching out to those who had resigned because of her, offering them their jobs back. This move, along with her departure, played a crucial role in revitalizing the company's performance, even surpassing previous achievements. As for me, I was unexpectedly promoted to the managerial position she vacated. The support and happiness of my colleagues buoyed me in my new role, despite the initial challenges and the pressure that came with the sudden career shift. The physical and emotional toll I had suffered under her management was acknowledged through compensation, part of which was deducted from her salary. This unexpected windfall improved my personal life significantly. Amidst these professional developments, my personal life flourished. My boyfriend of 3 years proposed, and we joyously began planning for our future together. With a baby on the way, we are eagerly anticipating our new arrival, fully embracing the joys and challenges of this new chapter in our lives.